Hello everyone, and welcome to 3D Basecamp at Dimensions with Trimble. I'm excited today to talk about architectural modeling refined, how I use SketchUp's solid tools for efficient design. I think it's one of the core things that everyone should know to properly model, and not just model, but to efficiently change their models and how to really create cool geometry. So I'm Matt Wheeler. I'm a senior partner at Affiniti Architects. I've been working for over 20 years and using SketchUp since about 2004. It's been a game changer for how I've used my career and how I've used the program in my career. So I'm really excited to show you what I do. I lead a team of about 16 modelers within my firm, so we use SketchUp every day, and this is how we present our projects, and this is the workflow in which we're going to talk about. Just to show you some of the projects that we work on, everything you see here was all modeled in SketchUp, designed in SketchUp. This is just how we work, how we present things, so everything you see here was done in SketchUp. So again, just some of our work. So what are we going to talk about? Why solid modeling is important, the tools you'll need to properly solid model, and then we'll get into some demos, understanding what the solid tools actually are, and then we'll use solid tools practically to show you how we use those in our daily workflow. We'll do some quick little examples as well as start building a house. So why is solid modeling important? So for many reasons. It'll force you to have clean geometry. It'll force you to reduce file sizes because you're keeping that really clean geometry and really tight in how you are approaching modeling. Most importantly for me, it allows me to quickly edit my models, and we'll kind of get into that into the demo, as well as in making changes. I don't know about you and how your workflow goes, but I have yet to have a client that we design something and it never changes. So there's always changes, there's always things that need to happen, and we need to be able to do that both quickly and efficiently. So we need to be able to have consistency in how we model amongst our team so that if someone else is working on a project, we can easily jump in and know what to expect in how that model was built so that we can quickly and easily edit it. Again, changes are inevitable, so we got to be able to make those changes. And as we talked about a little bit already, it improves collaboration because if there's consistency in how things are done, then we can easily jump in and make changes because we know what to expect. Some of the tools you'll need for success in this, well, are solid tools, right? This is a native in-house extension that comes pre-installed with SketchUp. I'll show you how to activate it if it's not already activated on yours. A couple plugins I use, one from TomTom, Solid Inspector 2, absolutely invaluable for this process. Same thing with Cleanup 3, another one by TomTom, an absolutely invaluable plugin that makes life much easier. And even beyond just solid tool modeling, it's just a fantastic one that helps you keep clean geometry throughout the process. Some other little functions like hidden geometry. Again, that's a native command within SketchUp, so we'll talk about that. As well as another fantastic plugin by Chris Fulmer called Loose to Groups. I use this one all the time, as well as then just a general understanding of groups themselves, which again we'll talk about in just a second. So let's get into why we're here. Let's dive into some demonstrations. So let's start looking at creating groups. That everything has to be a group, so everything starts from being a group. So what does that mean? So if we look here, this is just a square. I'm going to type R for rectangle, draw a rectangle, push pull, and I pull it up, and I just built a cube, right? But this is what I call loose geometry. So it's just faces. You see I can click a face, I can click a line. I can't do anything with this. At its core in SketchUp, groups are one of the most critical items. So the first thing we need to do is turn anything loose into a group. So you can do that by selecting everything, right-clicking, and going make group. I have Control, if I select everything, I have Control G as a keyboard shortcut to make a group. I think using keyboard shortcuts is invaluable from a speed perspective, and I highly suggest everybody understand keyboard shortcuts, create your own keyboard shortcuts. It is invaluable in my opinion. So we just made this group. I'm going to right click and explode and just kind of talk through this one more time. If you didn't know, there's actually multiple ways of making selections. So here's a fun little just tip to share with you. So a single click on the face obviously selects the face. A single click on the line selects the line. Now, if I double click the face, you'll see it selects the line as well as all of the bounding edges for that face. If I double click the line, it selects the line and then any face associated with that line. And then lastly, if I triple click anywhere, it selects everything that's attached to that face or that line. So it's a quick way. You can either go left to right and encompass the whole thing, or right to left, and then whatever you cross is what it selects. But it's always tricky because you could be missing some information. Or I generally go to a triple click, and that quickly allows me to select the whole thing, and then Control G to turn that into a group. All right, so now that we have a group, let's talk about groups versus components. It's not, components themselves are not critical in solid tool modeling, but they're critical to understand what might happen by interacting with components and how you might break the components. So I just wanted everybody to be aware, so we'll talk through that as well. So here, if I right click this first one, you can see edit group. This is a group. If I right click this one says edit component, so this one's a component. And just to make sure everybody is on the same page, if I make copies of these and I edit my group by double clicking, I can go inside the container and I can start editing this. If I draw something and pull it up, you'll see nothing happened because this was the copy of this. Now my component, if I jump in, edit this, push pull this, you see my component will also update. That's the nature of components. It's like if you ever use AutoCAD, it's like a block. If you edit one, it edits all. So it just needed to be aware as to the difference between groups components. So we're going to come back to this in just a second once we start interacting with solid tools to show you what will happen by using each of these in solid tools. So to talk about some of the plugins we mentioned previously, Solid Inspector. So it is imperative that your material is a solid, and there's a very specific definition to that. It essentially is a container that must be able to hold water without extra information in it. And so we'll go through some examples as to what that means. So before we even jump into solid tools themselves, I am going to use the solid tool icons to show you which ones are considered solids and which ones are not. It's a quick, easy way to see it. If you don't see solid tools, which is this bar right here, if you right click anywhere up here, you can come down and see, look for solid tools and just make sure it's checked and active and on. So I'm going to click on this first one here, which is the shell. Doesn't matter, but all I'm getting at is now if I hover over this guy, you'll see my arrow right now has the red circle saying that it's not touching anything that's solid. If I hover over the box, you see that turns to a number 1, and you'll see it pops up and says this is a solid group, so that's good. that one works. If I hover over the next one, even though all 4 of these look identical, this one is telling me not a solid, not a solid, and not a solid. Well, we can go through and start inspecting these on our own. I can go around and look and say, okay, well, this looks like a solid. I don't see why it's not a solid. And I can spend time and figure it out. But the great thing with Solid Inspector now is we have the ability to go to, I believe it's under extensions, or here it is, Solid Inspector. Now again, we talked about shortcuts. I use F3 as my shortcut for Solid Inspector. Or you can come to Tools and click on Solid Inspector with this highlighted. So we'll do that. And you'll see that this pops up and instantly highlights, hey, there was a stray edge inside of here. And we need to get rid of that. So we talked about there can't be extra information. So this finds the extra information as to why this is not a solid and allows me to fix it. Now, the great thing about this plugin, I can click Fix and it'll actually fix it for me. And we'll do that in a second, but before we do that, what I want to do is jump into one other command. So again, we don't see that there. What we could do is go to View and then Hidden Geometry. And again, you'll see I have W as my shortcut that allows me to turn hidden geometry on and off. So if I hit W, you'll see there's now this dotted line showing me there's a hidden line within this block. So I could find that pretty easily, but it's not always that easy. This is obviously pretty clear. And I can go in and simply erase it and then be done. But we'll go back to our Solid Inspector. I'm going to tap F3 because that's my shortcut command. And by the way, another quick little tip, if you need to, if you want to change your preferences and your shortcuts, if you go to Window, Preferences, and then come down to Shortcuts, you can type in any command you want. So for example, we were just talking about Solid Inspector. So under Filter, I just started typing Solid and then clicking on Tools, Solid Inspector. And here you can add a shortcut. So I'm going to tap the F3 and hit the plus sign. And because F3 is already assigned, you'll see it'll tell me that, gives me the warning. F3 is currently used by Tools, Solid Inspector 2. Do you want to reassign it? In this case, I can click yes because it's simply reassigning it to itself. Or you can click no and then find one that's not assigned, or yes and overwrite it. Totally up to you, but this is how you can set whatever preferences you want. Again, I'm going to click on my box. I'm going to hit F3, and then I'm going to click Fix and get rid of the straight edge, and you'll see that goes away. And now when I click on my solid tools and hover over, it's telling me, hey, this is now a solid. So let's go on to one more quick example. Don't know why this one, hit F3, straight edge. I'm not quite sure where it is. It's not highlighting it. So I'm going to hit Tab, and Tab will actually zoom in on where an issue is. Okay, so I can quickly see I have this micro line right here, and that little line, which is again why this tool of Solid Inspector is so great, because trying to find that little thing could be so tedious and near impossible. But now quickly typing F3, fix straight edge, and then now hovering over, this is now a solid. Great. So let's try one more. Hit F3. Oh, hey, this is telling me a surface border is missing. I'm going to hit Tab, and you can see it's doing this giant circle, so I'm going to move around. Oh, okay. It's missing a whole face here. So remember we said it had to be watertight. This is missing a face, so it wouldn't be able to hold water. Now on this one, it's telling me, hey, there's a surface border issue. But instead of fix all, it's telling me info. It cannot fix this one on its own, but it'll give you info and tell you kind of how to fix it. So in here, I'll just have to go in and draw a line and connect the dots and reapply that face, come back out, and now if I hit F3, it's saying everything's good to go. So that's Solid Inspector, such a great one. We will come here to go to Cleanup. So this is going to be in the same vein as Solid Inspector, but this is just such a great tool that it'll do things like Solid Inspector, as well as I'll use this later on just for ease of modeling, and you'll see that as well. So we're going to dive into this one a little bit deeper as well later, but the way this one works is, so again, if I check, this one here is a solid group, so I'm good here. I don't need to do anything. But if I check this one, and I'm only seeing this line because I have hidden geometry on, I'm going to turn hidden geometry off, come here and say, hey, this is not a solid anymore. I could hit F3 and it's finding that same straight edge. But instead of fixing it this time, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to hit W because I want to find all straight edges. I'm going to do Control A to select everything. And then we can run our clean command, which I have the tilde key, which is that little squiggly line to the left of the number 1. I guess technically it's the accent because I'm not hitting shift. But either way, it's the key to the left of number 1. That's my shortcut key, just where I put it. You can make it whatever one you want. Either way, when I tap it, or if I do go to Tools, I believe it's under Tools. I hardly ever go up here to look for these things because I use all my shortcut keys. So under Extensions, Cleanup 3, you can go Clean with last settings, all those things. All I really care about is just cleaning it. So I'm going to select everything, tap my Clean command, and you see as soon as I tapped it, that hidden line went away. Because what it's going to do, the way this works, is it searches for anything that doesn't belong to make this as simple as possible. So that worked out great. I'll jump into this one. Let's just double check. Is this one a solid? It is, so I think we're good to go. So that's Cleanup command. And again, we'll jump more into that one later and show you a little bit more about that. I believe this file we're using right now is provided to you in the folder, so you can follow along, download it, test all this out, and you'll see these little screen grabs as to where you can download and find these from the extension warehouse. Lastly, Loose to Groups from Chris Fulmer is an absolutely fantastic plugin. I use this all the time in my day-to-day workflow. We'll show you some of those features right now. So here we have the same cubes that we were talking about. Everything here is loose geometry except for this one. You can see this one is here and it is a solid group, great, but this one is not and this one is not. So I can go through here, triple click, Control G, come here, triple click, Control G, and turn all these into groups and I'm done. But if we have a ton of these things, it's not always efficient, and I'm always looking for how can I do the least amount of work to do the most things. So that's where this guy comes in. So I'm going to grab all of these, Shift X to explode everything. So everything is now back into loose geometry. So to use this plugin, I'm going to select everything, and I believe it'll be again under Extensions, Chris Fulmer Tools, and then Loose to Groups. And again, you can see I have Shift G here as my shortcut command. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to hit Shift G on my keyboard. And now instantly, this is now a group, this is now a group, and this is a group. So just like the title says, it turns loose geometry into groups. It doesn't necessarily make them solids, meaning if I explode all these again and I delete this face and then select everything and then go Shift G, it still turns this into a group, 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 even though this one is not a solid. It's just grouping everything together. So just to be clear on that. All right. So let's get into some actual examples. We've gone through the tools we need, and we have an overall understanding of the very basics to get us into solid modeling. So let's now start talking about how solid modeling actually works. So again, as we mentioned, you have to have solid items, grouped solid items, to be able to interact with each other. So this one here is a grouped item. This one here you can see is loose geometry. So that's not going to do anything for us. So we would need to triple click, Control G, turn that into a group. Now we have two groups in which we can interact. So let's start interacting with things. The first one up is the subtract tool. This subtract tool essentially removes one solid from another solid. So the order of operation is important. You want to start with the item that will remove the chunk from the item you want to keep, meaning so let's just show you by example. So if I come over and go to my subtraction tool, which will be this third one right here. So if you hover over it and let the mouse sit, it'll highlight which one is which. So I'm going to go to my subtract tool, and I'm going to select the first one and then click subtract. And or if you don't have anything selected and go to subtract, you'll see down here on the bottom it actually gives you directions. It's saying select first solid. So I'll select the first solid, and then now it says select second solid, and we click the second one, and so now you can see it subtracted the first solid from the second solid. So I call them cutting boxes. So we're going to use a cutting box to subtract from what we want to keep. Now if we do the order of operations in reverse, so we'll go to subtract, select the bottom one first and then the top one, you see it creates the opposite effect. So that's subtract tool. Now we'll go with the intersect tool, which is this this second one. Now I forgot to mention this earlier. Solid Tools is only part of Pro. I believe there's minimal Solid Tools in the free online version, but you do need to have the Pro version for the full Solid Tool package. So if we go to intersect, and again the same thing, this one's going to be a little bit less important from order of operation, and you'll see why in a second. So if I select the first one, whoops, I had something else selected. So if I go intersect, select the first one and then the second one, this is now creating geometry where these two items come together. So just as it says, it's the intersect tool. So you can, if I hit X to go into X-ray mode, you'll kind of see how these two are overlapping each other. That's where they're intersecting, and that's the geometry we're going to create. I can also select both and then hit intersect, and it'll do the same thing. So now we're going to do the trim tool, which the trim tool works a lot like the subtract command, except there's one slight difference, and I'm going to show you here what that difference is. So the first one, I'm going to do the subtract tool. The second one, I'll do the trim tool, and you'll see the difference. So if I go to subtract, and I click 1 and then 2, you'll see just like before, it subtracted this one from this one. Now if I do the trim tool, we're going to end up with the same result, but it'll happen in a different way, and there's one important reason why this one would be valuable. So this second from the right is the trim tool. So I'll do trim, and I'll do number 1 and then number 2. Now it may not look like something happened, but if I move this geometry out of the way, you'll see I ended up with the same result, but the big difference is that the trim tool does not delete the first set of geometry, the cutting box as I call it. So if you have to do multiple cuts, this is a good way of essentially subtracting things while keeping the geometry there. So what does that mean? let's come down here and say we want to build a cool design in a fence. I'm going to hide this real quick. And you see we have all of our pickets here. And we want to create this elliptical kind of cut within our fence. I could select this and go to subtract and subtract from the first one, and you see we made that cut. Great, that's the start of it, but I now lost my cutting box. It's gone because we use subtract. I'm going to undo. So one thing you could do is I'm going to hit Control C to copy this, and then we will subtract this first one from the second one. Even though the box is now gone, if I hit Control Shift V for paste in place, that comes back, and I can now subtract again, and I can keep doing that over and over. And just to also add it out there, I use Alt V as in Victor as my subtract because I use subtract quite a bit. So if I select the first one, Alt V, second one, Control Shift V, select the first one, Alt V, subtract. So you can see I can continue to do this, but we're also always looking for efficiency. How can we be super efficient? So let me undo and come all the way back. So this is where the trim command would be much more helpful. I can open up my trim command, select the first one, and then click the second one. And if I hide this, you see it made the cut. Great. And it left the box behind, so I can use it again. So trim, trim, and then trim, trim, and we'll just keep doing trim. And you can make a shortcut, which I don't use trim a ton, but you can make a shortcut and just keep doing this over and over. So you can see if I hide this, we're now moving much faster than we were before, a lot less commands, a lot less interaction, while getting the same kind of result. So that is the trim command. I am going to undo this because I'm going to come back and we're going to combine a bunch of these other commands and attack this problem in a different way in just a moment. So we are going to put a pin in this one and come right back. So now let's get into split and we'll see what happens here. I'm going to have nothing selected. I will grab split and I'm going to do item 1 with item 2. Okay, we completed it. Doesn't really look like anything happened, though you can see lines are now existing versus back here there aren't. So what does split do? Split works a lot like subtract as well as intersect as well as trim, meaning you're creating geometry, but split will actually kind of do all the above. So you see it subtracted out of this one, subtracted out of this one, and created this geometry where they intersected. So split kind of is a combination of all those things. So you can create very complex geometry and multiples of those geometries pretty quickly. Outer shell and union. So both of these, all of the ones we've been talking about are subtractive. These two are our additive, meaning they combine things. So outer shell and union generically do the same thing, but there again is going to be one slight difference. And we're going to talk about the difference in just a second. We're going to start with outer shell. This is honestly the one I use the most. Outer shell and subtract are the ones that I use probably 95% of the time. And what outer shell does is, think about it like an eggshell. You're essentially creating what is the outer shell of the combined geometry that you're looking at. So using our same two cubes, if I use outer shell, which is going to be this first one here, I can combine first one with second one. And you see this is now one set of geometry. If I come in to the group and I hit X-ray, you can see this is clean combined geometry as one group versus here this is uninteracted geometry. So you can see the difference. Now if I select both and then do outer shell, it does the same thing. So again, this is one where you can go click click or just select everything that you want to join together. So now let's get into union, which is going to be this third icon here. The real difference is, and I honestly hardly ever use this one in reality, it tries to keep the information that's on the inside as well as the outside, versus outer shell is very clean and simple. So what does all that mean? I'm going to hide this lid right here on these boxes. So you'll see I have a rough floor plan where I have outer walls, inner walls, etc., as well as this roof, right? So I'm going to, again, I'm going to hide these, and I'm going to use my outer shell real quick, and I'm going to, just to show you, this is a wall, this is a wall, this is a wall, and these are my exterior walls. So I'm going to use my outer shell, and I could use union, would do the exact same thing. In fact, I'll do this one here as outer shell, and I clicked all these objects. And now what's happened, you can see those lines have gone away. You can see the lines exist here. These lines have gone away because now this is one complete set of geometry because we brought everything together. So that was eggshell. And on this one, if I use union, it'll do the exact same thing, because the difference between outer shell and union has not occurred yet. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But you can see this is the same geometry. So now if I unhide things, I now have a lid. So I'm going to use outer shell on this first one and click, and then I'm going to use union on this one, click and click. Okay, so these two look identical right now, right? But if I go to X-ray mode, you'll see that this is simply, just as we previously described, the outer shell of the whole thing. So all of the interior spaces are completely gone because this command was only worried about having what is the outermost piece that still creates a solid, versus union is essentially creating, if I come into this group and select this, it essentially created this group, this group, this group, and this group. So it's looking how it can create all the groups that it needs to keep the same voids that previously existed. Again, I really don't get into that one much. I find just using outer shell works most of the time because I don't group things together this way. So let's get back to this one over here, this trim. Let's kind of apply attacking how we might even be able to create this fence outline even more efficiently using all of our solid tools combined. So each one of these pickets are an individual group. That means I interact this with this at one time, and that's pretty inefficient. So I'm just going to grab this solid and I'm going to move this down just because, and I'm going to put it here at the very bottom, and I'm going to make another copy, and I'm going to copy it 10 feet over. And what I'm going to do is, and this might seem weird and convoluted at first, but hopefully you'll see where I'm going with this in just a second. I'm going to select all my pickets and this bottom piece, and I'm going to click outer shell. And now, if I jump into this, this is all one giant group that has this unifying piece on the bottom. Now, if I use my subtract command, so I'm going to select this top one, Alt-V for subtract, and now I select this, in one shot, I just got rid of this whole thing, and perfect, it looks great, but I now have this weird geometry on the bottom that was kind of combining everything. And I don't want that anymore. So I'm going to move this piece over back right on top of where it was. And I'm going to use Alt-V once again. And I'm going to subtract that out from this. And there we go. That's all now gone. Perfect. That was essentially 2 interactions, and I was able to accomplish everything we talked about before in creating this. But as you might be aware, if I come back inside of here, these now are all individual loose groups. That's not necessarily what I want. I want to get these back to being their own individual groups. Okay, well, what did we talk about previously? We have this over here, this loose to groups. So when I come into my fence, I'm just going to double click to get inside of here, select everything, and then Shift G. Now, each one of these is back to an individual group that quickly. So that is kind of how I want you to start thinking about how Solid Tools really works into day-to-day workflows to create geometry quickly and efficiently. And it just becomes ingrained into everything you do and how you model everything. And we're going to get into a house example in just a minute to really talk through that. Before we get into the house example, let's look at just a couple of quick little examples that might be of interest. So I created this kind of spiral picket, if you will, and just wanted to show you how I did it using Solid Tools. I'm sure there's many ways of building this, but this was just a fun, quick way. So I have this little square right here, or cube I should call it. I'm going to jump into here, so I'm dealing with the loose geometry. I'm going to select the top face of this. I'm going to hit T for rotate. I don't think that's a preset rotate. I changed it because I think R was rotate or something. Whatever the original one was, I just ended up changing T for rotate just to be clear. But you can go to Tools and Rotate is all we're doing. And I'm going to come to this center point. I'm going to click once, drag out, click again. And now I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. I'm now going to erase this line. I just needed it for the midpoint intersection. And now I have this guy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this over just so you can see what's happening. I'm going to then copy this up, and we will rotate this 45 degrees. And then we'll copy this one up. And actually, I can grab both of these, and we can copy this up. And we can now copy it up and maybe type 10x to array and copy, make many copies. So from here, we can select everything. And I'm going to hit Alt-C, which is my shortcut for my outer shell. So I have everything selected, Alt-C. Now everything is joined together as one solid. Then I'm going to jump inside of here. I'm going to hit Alt-A to select, Control-A to select everything. And then to get rid of all these lines, I'm going to run my clean command. And then, so you can see that got rid of some of these lines. And off screen, I'm going to pull this over. We are going to pull up soften edges, and we can just slide this over until we soften everything to make it look good, and done. So that is how I use Solid Tools to create this this kind of spiral design. So you can play around with it. You can change, instead of 45, you can do even like 30 degrees. You can play around with however you want to do it. You can change the size of it to get all different kinds of effects. So again, if you copied it down, squatted it 45, and then let's just copy just another one up And we're going to run through that same process, doing all the same things again, and we will go there. So you can see I can make a tighter spiral. So you can play with it however you want to play with, just kind of want to get the idea across. Just a quick thing just to kind of show how we can make this generic flower. It's not really how you would make a flower, but I just want to show the process of how you can really start using some of these things. So I have this sphere that was made. It is a solid. I'm actually going to hit S for scale, and then hit Control because I want to scale by the center, and I'm going to elongate this and just create something like that. And then I'm going to make a copy, and I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. Doesn't really matter how far. And now this, I have two egg shape looking things. I'm going to grab the top one, hit Alt V for subtract, and subtract the top one from the bottom one. And there you go. We just kind of created this bowl shape. And so that's one of the ways we can create this kind of bowl shape, and we can stretch it and move it and do whatever we want to do and kind of create this petal. So that's how all of these were created, and this was just simply then rotated up, and then you can start rotating it around, however you want it to do. Let's just go something like that. So that's kind of all how it's done. And then maybe to create a leaf, we're going to kind of want to create a compound curve. So I create this elliptical kind of shape and just simply push pulled it, and then maybe we have this curve in the other direction, so we will move those on top of each other, select both, and we will run our split, intersect is what I'm looking for. Where's my, there it is, intersect command. And so there is this more complex shape, and we can put it all together and turn this into a flower. So just a fun, quick little way of starting to see how these can really be used. If anybody's into woodworking, we can show you how all of these work, creating different connection joints and all that sort of stuff. So we can create a dovetail. Now, this is not the technical size. This would probably split the wood, but not the whole point of this. I'm actually going to select this top piece, and we are going to use our trim command. So now I can trim this top piece to this bottom piece, and you can see this bottom piece now has the piece that will accept the dovetail, and then this one that goes in. We can kind of play around with doing a half lap, if you will. So I will move this piece over, and we are going to subtract this from this board, and then we can move this piece over, and we're going to subtract this piece from this board, and now we have a half lap connection. And if you really want to get fancy, I created this square peg, and we'll put it right there in the center. And we will, again, use our intersect, and so, our trim. So I'm going to trim this from this guy, and then I'm going to trim this from here. And so you can see our peg still exists. And then on this board, you see we now cut the hole out for the peg, and we cut the hole out for the peg. So there's our half lap with a peg connection. So we can kind of continue and do more of the same. I mean, really, these are just more kind of dovetails, if you will. So we'll subtract this out, and then we'll move this over, and we will trim that. So now you can see I have a half lap dovetail connection. And we'll just do one more and kind of show you, it's just something kind of fun. If you really want to get crazy in your detailing, if you really needed to, you see I have this screw that's modeled, and I have this block of wood. I can take this screw and hit Alt V. Excuse me, we're actually going to not subtract. We actually want to do a in intersect. So we're going to select the screw and intersect with the block of wood. It didn't work out the way I was expecting it. Okay, let's go copy the block of wood, and then we're going to subtract the screw from the wood. There we go. And we're just going to come in here and get rid of that piece. And so now you see I actually have a screw hole in that block of wood, and I can copy my screw over. And now you have, if I go to X-ray mode, you actually have a screw in the block of wood. Now I generally would never model this, but just kind of want to show you what happens. So again, we can even do it here. I'm going to hit Alt V and subtract this screw from this block of wood. And you can see that quickly we just modeled all that geometry into here. One last little example before we jump off into a house. So I have this lattice here, and we have this arched opening in a wall, and we want to cut the lattice to that. This could be a very time-consuming thing that just would have taken forever to do without solid tools. And just show you how I made the lattice. This is a group, solid group here, and this is a solid group. I just simply copied this over, however far you want to copy it. Let's go like 10x and copy this up 8 inches and 10x. And again, you can make however much you want, and then we can grab all of these things, Alt C, and that unions them all together into one piece of geometry. So that's now a solid. I'm just going to erase that because I already have this one built. And then I'm going to slide my lattice into my recessed opening, and we'll drop it right there. And if I hit X-ray, you see I have all this extra geometry sitting inside there, and I want it perfectly cut to my opening. So I'm going to grab my wall. I'm going to hit Control C. I could use the intersect command, but I'm just going to use subtract because I want to be able to subtract the wall, look at what happened, and then we'll put the wall back. So Alt V for subtract. So I'm subtracting the wall from my lattice, and now we have a perfectly cut lattice. And then Control Shift V, I can paste my wall back in place, and I now have the perfect geometry very quickly. So hopefully you can see through all these examples that we can create really complex geometry really quickly and make edits to things really quickly. So we're now going to jump into building a house. We're going to kind of bring all these pieces together of how we create our the core of our daily workflow in our office. So jumping all the way over here, I have some outlines of the beginnings of a house. And I have a ground plane that we'll be putting the house on, and we'll show you lots of things of how this kind of all comes together. So this comes from a floor plan that I put together in AutoCAD and just created polylines and exported those out. So this is just an outline of my house. The insides really don't matter right now for what we're talking about. So here's my workflow of how I build the core of every house that I do, including all those examples you saw at the beginning of this presentation. So looking here, what's really happening if I go into this group is I have, this is all interior, this is a connector, and this is all interior. This is an outdoor shower. This is a porch, and this is a porch. So I'm going to select everything. And here's another fun little extension if you're not using it. Huge time saver. I selected all the lines, and then on my keyboard, I'm going to tap the plus sign on the number pad, and I can instantly create faces everywhere. To do that, if you go to the extension warehouse, this is going to be the Enarod make face. Excuse me if I mispronounce her name. She's absolutely incredible. the number of extensions she makes that are so mind-blowing. It's just amazing. So hopefully I doing it justice in pronouncing her name. Regardless, this one here, this Face Creator, this plugin here is absolutely incredible, and it's free. So this is where you can download and install that one. And again, I just simply went into Window Preferences, and if I go type in, actually I think it's Face Creator. So you can see extensions Face Creator, and I just added in my number pad plus sign just because it's an easy one for me to use. So that'll bring us to here. So we had talked about that this is my interior. This is actually a courtyard. This is a front porch, and this is a back porch, and this is a shower. So I'll show you how that all comes together. So how do we put all the pieces we've talked about together into one system of workflow using all of the clean commands, the solid inspectors, and the solid tools? Well, I'm going to first select what I'm calling the interior, or the shell of the house. I'm going to double click that because, again, we talked about selections. If I double click the face, it selects the face and all the lines that wrap around it. And I'm going to hit Control G, and that turns that into a group. I'm going to do the same thing with this porch. Double click, Control G, double click, Control G, double click, Control G. This is actually a courtyard, so I don't need that one, so I'm going to delete it. Now, let's start with the house. I'm going to double click to get inside this group, and I have this plane. I'm going to do a push-pull, and I'm going to go up 12 inches just as a generic placeholder right now for my foundation. I'm just kind of in, I'll call it schematic design. I'm not really putting footers in or anything of that nature, but I do like having a thickness for the flooring for my house itself. Just generically using 12 inches right now. But you can see these lines popped up if I hit Shift H, which I use as hide rest of model. If you're not using this, it's a fantastic little shortcut to where you see I have the rest of the model is here. All I'm doing is tapping Shift H back and forth, where I can either focus in on the group I'm working on, or I can reference the rest of the model. So sometimes I don't want the rest of the model and I just need to focus in on what I'm working on. Other times I need to do references. So you see these lines right here were drawn because the overall line was split due to this porch piece being here. Well, what's a quick way we can get rid of that? We've talked about it. If I hit Control A, and then hit my cleanup 3 command, which again I believe is extensions, cleanup 3, or I run my shortcut, you see all those lines instantly go away. So that's where putting all these pieces together, creating a systematic workflow, allows me to be consistent in how I work, and so everybody knows what to expect when they open the model. My goal that I always talk about with my team is we're creating a formulaic process that gets us 80% of the way there. The other 20% is just the custom pieces that we need to do to make the process work for that particular project. So that 80%, it just gets us there, and then we just fill in the rest, and that's it. So now to make my exterior walls, we work in Florida where pretty much everything we do is 8-inch block wall, and then we usually do a 2-inch furring on that block wall. So I'm simply going to do an offset. I hit O for offset, and I bring it in, I let go, and then I type in 10, enter. So I now have a 10-inch offset around the whole perimeter of this house. I'm going to push pull that up, and I'm going to go 12 foot 2 inches to create a 12-foot ceiling on the ground floor, and done. So that is my foundation and my ground floor walls, at least the start of it. So now I'm going to go into this back porch area. I'm going to double click it. And if you remember the house, we pulled the house up 12 inches for the porch. I'm only going to pull the porch up 6 inches because I just want a 6-inch slab there for right now. And from a water intrusion standpoint, I want a 6-inch step from my house down to the porch and all that good sort of stuff. So that's why I'm modeling the porch separately in this moment. So that now is that piece, and I'm going to come to my front porch, do the same thing. I just want that 6 inches. And similarly for my shower, I'm going to want that 6 inches. Now, I want all this as one piece. I don't want all these individual pieces. I want to bring all these together. So the easy way to do that now is by using solid tools, because each of these are perfectly built solids. I'm going to hit Alt-C for my union command, for my outer shell command. And it doesn't really matter where I start. I'm going to start with number 1 and then click on my walls, click on my porch, and then click on my porch. And so you can see that this is now all perfectly combined. So if I undo, and I'm going to kind of do this from underneath, because you can see again, individual, 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 individual. If I hit Alt-C to do my outer shell, as soon as I click 1 to 2, you'll see these lines will go away because this is now unifying this as one piece. If I click here, that unifies. If I click here, that unifies. So now we have and this is all still perfectly solid. We don't have to do anything different. Now, this is a group within a group, and if I try to do a solid, you'll see it says this is not a solid. And if I run F3 to do my solid inspector, it's telling me there's lots of reasons why. Let me hide up. I still had these lines in here, so I got to get rid of those lines. So that's one of the reasons. So if I undo, whoops, I'm going to show you what's happening. If I hit F3, it's saying, hey, there's 12 stray edges as well as a nested instance. It can fix the stray edges, but the nested instance it can't. And the nested instance, all that means is I have a group, and if I go into the group, I have another group. So Solid Tools does not like groups within groups when you're interacting with solids. I'm going to hide this group real quick, and you'll see I just have all these lines left over from the courtyard. That's where the all the lines were coming from that it found. I'm going to delete those and get rid of it, unhide. And now here, if I explode this, so this is back to loose geometry, but that's all still within inside this container. And if I run it, everything is now a perfect solid again. So that is my ground floor. All right, so let's create a second floor, which is what I have here. So I'm gonna just move this guy up and inference it to the top of this wall, and I'm gonna move this over, I believe it's 100 feet that I had it placed. So you'll see that this kind of fits perfectly over top of here. And we're gonna kind of do the same thing again. I'm gonna select everything, and I hit tap my plus sign to make all my faces. I'm gonna turn this into a group and this into a group. So now this time, when I'm interacting with here, we generally use 24 inches for our interstitial space to allow for mechanical and all that sort of stuff, again here in Florida. So I'm gonna do 24 inches, do my same 10-inch offset, and maybe we'll just do 10-foot ceilings on the second floor. So I'll raise this up 10 foot too. And then here, this is a balcony. I'm gonna double click this. So since I want a 6-inch step, I'm gonna raise this up 18 inches because we did the other piece 24 inches. And then I'm gonna outer shell these guys together, combine them, and so now that's all one piece. And again, since I'm a group within a group, I'm going to explode this and then come back out. And now you see we have our house perfectly, our second floor, perfectly sitting over our lower floor. And we're creating, you know, our covered entry here and all that good sort of stuff. Now, you can leave it like this for now, second floor and a ground floor, and there's reasons why you can do that. But since we're talking about solid tools, I want to take this a step further, and I am going to union, or excuse me, I keep saying union, really I mean outer shell. So Alt-C, and I'm going to outer shell the top piece to the bottom piece, and you see those lines go away because these are now perfectly connected pieces. So that we now have a perfect shell going on. Similarly, I'm in the design, we're getting into design and don't really need to do too much of that right now, but let's actually, I want to draw a window right here just to kind of show you how I would do it. Now I have all kinds of my window blocks, and if you guys are interested, I'm actually doing a whole dynamic component seminar as well at Basecamp, where I'm going to be talking about all of these dynamic components that I make. But I'm going to grab my window here. I'm just going to drop this in here, and really the dynamic component I can I'm just going to move this over here. I'm going to show you what's happening. So if I drop this in here, here's my window. And I can say, here's my component options. This is a single window that is 30 inches wide by 72 inches tall. Say I want a double window, so I can change the number of windows from 1 to 2, click apply, and I now have 2 windows. If I want to change this to a 36-inch wide window, I can do that. If I want to change my mullions, I can do that. So this is just a dynamic component. Doesn't really have anything to do with this specific class, but just want you to understand what it is that I'm currently doing over here with this window, because I am going to move the center. Let's find my center. So it goes there, and then I'm going to grab this, and I'm putting the head of the window at the floor, so then I can move it up. I'm going to put the head of the window at 10 feet or 10'2" for my use. And now I want to create a window that kind of goes all the way across. And you'll see why this is important in a second. So I'm going to make this, let's see here. What is this distance? This is 18 feet. So if I do, let's go 6 3-foot windows that are 10 feet tall. Yep, perfect. I got a little bigger because of frames, and that's okay. We'll just knock this down to like a 34-inch, and that's fine. So what I want to do now that I have my window, getting back into Solid Tools, show you how I do windows. And this is a whole bigger discussion we can get into at some other point, but I'm going to trace over my window, and I'm going to push this in. So now you see I'm creating a block that's the exact size of my window, and then I'm going to use my subtract command and select my wall, and you see I've now cut out that window from my wall. So that's how I use Solid Tools. And I've created, you can see this recess that I've created where this window goes, because in this one I actually want to create like a kind of like a soffit, an exterior soffit, if you will. So I'm going to push this down 12 inches, triple click this, Control G to turn that into a group. So now I have my wall group and I have my soffit group. And if I hit Alt C and join those two guys together, I have now created that. Maybe I want this soffit down another to really clean this up, and we can do that. So hopefully you're starting to see the process. I'm modeling my house, but I'm doing everything through Solid Tools, and you can see how I can bring everything together. So that's the process of how I will model a house. It's just more of the same throughout. Similarly, I believe my stair exists, if I remember correctly, kind of like right here. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball this for a second. 8 foot by 10. Let's say that's gonna be my stairwell opening. I'm just gonna pull this down. Doesn't matter really how far, just as long as I'm not hitting the ground floor. So Control G, and if I go underneath inside of here, you can see this is that box that I just made. And so I'm going to subtract this from my house, and that just now creates a really nice clean stairwell opening. So this is how I model. This is the process, and this is why modeling in solids is so important, that I can keep things really nice and clean and uniform. We're going to build a roof, and I'm going to show you how I use solid tools to build a roof, but we're going to do that in just a minute, because first I'm going to move this house over top of my site, we'll call it, and I'm going to move my house down 4 inches. Whoops, went the wrong way. Whoops. I'm going to move this down, and I'm just going to move the top of my porch flat with the ground, and then maybe up 2 inches. So now if I go to X-ray mode, you can kind of see that my house is embedded into the ground by 4 inches. So why is that important? Well, if I double click on my ground plane, you see I have grass and everything is going to grow around my house. This is a solid, and that's how obviously I build it, because I do everything in solids. So now I can create a copy of the house and then subtract the house from the ground plane. And you see I can instantly cut out the exact shape of my house in my ground plane and then paste in place. And now I have a perfect outline of the house to sit on. Because again, everything is done through solids, and this is how I build. And so I even have, this is kind of like a reflecting pool, if you will. So let's build a pool real quick, and I'm going to show you that. So again, I'm going to Control A, tap plus sign to make this a face. I'm going to pull this down. I'm just going 48 inches because this is just going to be a thin reflecting pool. I'm going to offset in 8 inches for my walls, and then maybe push this down even just like 24 inches. And then I'm going to make a copy of this bottom and come back out. So this is my solid pool. I'm going to paste in place that bottom plane. We'll pull this up, match the top, and maybe bring it down an inch, and we'll turn that into a group because everything should always be a group. I'm going to match the material here and paint the inside of this water. So there's my pool with water, and let's move this over to my house. You can see the design of this is that the house has this kind of little bridge that goes through everything, but you can see we have a couple of issues going on. I have a very moldy pool right now because I have all the grass growing through, and that's not good. And I also have water and this pool going through the house. So we're going to use solid tools to clean all this up right now. So I'm going to start with my pool. And because the pool has this indentation on, I really want to select this bottom face and create a new solid, all of that. And I'm going to show you why. And then first I'm going to start by not doing that. I'm just going to select my pool. So this guy right here, I'm going to select it, Control C to copy it, Control V to cut out the grass. But you can see what happens is it did cut it out, but it also left behind all of this stuff because I had that dip void in the pool. So I'm going to undo. And as I was mentioning before, I'm going to select this bottom face. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to Control Shift V. That pasted it into place. I can't see it because it's kind of down below everything, so I'm going to hide everything, hide this, and this is where it came in. And we're going to push pull this, and again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go 10 feet just to make it big, turn this into a group, and then unhide everything. Now, this cutting box that I just created, Alt V onto my ground plane, and because we created a full mass, that now perfectly cut out everything and left nothing behind. So there we go, we just cleaned out the pool. Great. Now we have to edit the pool to conform to the house, because you can see the pool is actually running through the house right here, and we don't want that. So I'm going to select my house, and in fact I know we just made this ground or the thickness of my, I'll call it my foundation, 12 inches. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit more. I just need some depth in here. Control C, and I'm going to cut out the ground again just to add a little bit more depth. And actually, you know what? We can go. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to pull it down 34 inches, I believe it is, just so we can match the pool perfectly. There we go. So paste that back in place. So now I'm going to select my pool, and I kind of want to work in an isolated world. So I'm going to double click all my walls, Control A, Control G, because I want to turn that back into a solid, and I want to work with a solid inside of here. So I'm going to take this house, again, I'm going to copy the house, and then I'm going to subtract the house away from the pool. So now you see the pool has been cut to perfectly fit this house. So I'm going to paste the walls back in. I'm going to grab my pool. I'm going to cut the pool out of my house and then explode this. And now if I come into the pool, I'm going to delete my old pool and paste this one back in and explode. And we just got to get rid of these little nubs that that got left behind. But this pool is now perfectly conformed to the house, and that's what's so great about solid tools. As for the water, I can just simply click on this plane. I'm going to right click and go intersect faces with model, and you'll see that it's giving me these lines, which is exactly where my walls are. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of come in and just clean all this up, and we will have the water now perfectly cut out. So if we come out, you see everything is now perfect and clean and exactly what we need. So again, this is why having an efficient, consistent, uniform methodology to create these models allows for much better consistency and collaboration. So let's jump onto the roofs and let's see how that goes. So I have this outline here, and this comes from an actual AutoCAD wall section. I always create a polyline to where you can see the exact outline of like where the truss would be and where the plywood would be and where my fascia would be. So this is a one-to-one of what my actual roof would look like. So I'm just going to make a copy. I'm going to bring it over here, and we will again select it. I'm going to hit plus sign to make it into a face. And I always like keeping an extra copy, so I'm just going to copy this down. I usually go 50 feet just to kind of keep it down there. And then I'm actually going to move this up 5 feet because I want to draw an outline, because we're going to use the follow me command, but I don't want to interfere with the actual lines. So I want to be able to draw outside of it. So I'm just going to do a square here and here, and erase that line. So now I have this roof. I'm going to want to build this roof separately, so we're going to do that in just a second. So I'm going to, if I hide the rest of the model, I now have the outline of how I want my roof to go. And in reality to make this work, I want to move this guy here because this is going to be my starting point. I'm going to rotate it. So what's happening is this is my insertion point right here, and I have that perfectly aligned with here 5 feet above. I'm going to double click this to select all the lines, but I don't want this one here, so I'm going to do Control Shift, which will allow me to deselect everything else. So now I just have these outside blue lines, and I'm going to tap F for follow me, and again, I don't think that's the original one. That's I created it for that. It might be the same, I don't remember, but either way you want to use the follow me command, and then if I tap this face, it quickly builds the outline of my roof. I can double click this and get rid of it because I don't need that anymore. I'm going to select the whole roof and move it down 5 feet because remember we moved it up 5 feet, and now you see we're sitting perfectly on the beam. So we now have the beginnings of a roof. How do we finish this roof, and how do we finish this roof using solid tools? Well, I'm going to turn this into a group because we're going to have multiple groups of roofs within this kind of grouping, if you will. So now let's go into this group, and I'm going to draw this line, and by doing that, that will fill this gap in. I'm going to select this and Control C to copy it. I'm actually going to undo what I just did, and I'm going to come back out. So now this is back into being its own solid group, and I'm going to paste in place the outline that we created. I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to match it to the height of my current roof. Triple click this, Control G to turn that into a group, and now I can Alt C and outer shell this piece to this piece, and we've now just filled in that donut hole, if you will. So we have the beginnings of a really clean roof. So now if I double click and I want to edit the loose geometry, and we're simply going to start drawing a line, and I'm going to, so I entered point 1. Now I'm going to start kind of going backwards and hold Shift, which will lock me on that inference. And I'm going to come across and tap the other side, and that will give me my peak of where those two would intersect, and come down and draw. And we will do the same thing on this side. Go up here, click, and we can click that and click that. So there is that part of the roof, and we're just going to do more of the same. Intersect there to there, and then this one, do more of the same, click there to there, and we now have our completed roof. But we have this information. If I go to X-ray mode, you see there's this plane inside of here that I don't want. I can go through and say erase, 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 all that sort of stuff, but it's time consuming, and I'll show you a fun little trick. I'm going to right click any one of these planes and go to hide, and you can see we're now looking at that plane that exists. I'm going to double click that and then click delete, and by doing that, that erases everything and will actually re-show this missing piece, and we now have a perfectly clean roof. And this is still a solid. This is a mirrored house, so we are going to draw that line, and I'm just going to rotate this roof 180 degrees. Oh, it's a little off, and it's because the front to back, it's mirrored left to right but not front to back, and we're just going to put that back into its right place. So now we have the left and right side of the roof perfectly made. So the middle piece, why we didn't do that one, is because I'm actually going to do a pop-up roof here. So I drew the rectangle. I'm going to offset this again 10 inches, delete the interior, and I'm going to push-pull this up 24 inches because I want to create a 24-inch beam change. I'm going to turn that into a group, Control X. I'm going to come back out, and going into my wall group, select all, Control G to turn that into a group, Control Shift V to paste that in place. And now I can outer shell these guys together. And you see, by doing that, everything is perfectly clean and aligned. My beams are created, everything. So then I can explode that, come back out, and this is now my solid again. So that quickly we can build essentially a raised beam. Now, the alternative method and why this works so well is otherwise, if you come in here and this is all loose geometry, and if you were like, okay, let me draw this and this, because we gotta close these off, and then delete this, delete this, delete this. Oh, well, okay, something weird's going on. Like, so let's delete and delete. Now we can push this up 24, then push this up 24. You can see there's just so much more effort into loose modeling versus working in solid tools. I don't have to worry about any of that. Just in real time, I can do that so much quicker. And to get into the roof, we will draw this outline, because I need that outline. And we are going to, I'm going to turn this guy into a group and select by my insertion point. And the reason why I turned it into a group, because I didn't want this geometry to attach to this geometry, because this is loose right now. And again, I'm going to move this up 5 feet. I'm going to grab all of this geometry and go into here and paste. So again, this is moved up 5 feet because I don't want this to attach to this. And 5 feet is just a generic number I use. Now I can do the same thing we did, but I'm going to try and play the chess game here and think through this and making this a little bit easier. I'm going to undo, and I know I'm going to take my, since this is just a pure rectangle, I'm going to take my shortest edge and I'm going to draw a vertical line, and I'm going to touch my angle because that will create the perfect peak, and then come down, and then we'll draw this line all the way across, and we now have an exact size of my roof to the small point. And what does that get us? Well, when I select this face and then follow me and click here, you see it builds a perfect roof in one shot. I can get rid of that. I'm gonna go to X-ray mode, and it always puts this little plane right here in the middle. So we'll just clean that guy up real quick, and we will move everything back down 5 feet. And there we go. We are mostly done with a roof, even with a raised beam and everything. And so you can see how those all come together. Now we got to clean all of this up, and we can do that pretty easily, and we'll show you that right now. And if I hit X-ray mode, you can see I have this soffit running through the house and running through here. So it's not quite done, but so we have 2 steps left. I'm going to edit this roof and simply draw a line from these intersections. And if I grab this point and start moving it, and then hit Shift to lock it on reference, and then tap this face, that will create a perfect ridge line. And since again we're mirrored, we'll just do the same thing on this side and go to there. So that is step 1. If I go to X-ray mode, you see that it's mostly there. We still have this roof going through this roof, and just to show you what happened, all we did was just add that piece on really quickly. Now, using our solid tools, I can join this one with this roof with this roof. So now this is one solid roof, and if I go to X-ray mode, you see all of that geometry is now gone, and we now have a perfect clean roof. And so that's everything we were looking for, and it's still a solid. So if I come back out, there is my house with a one-to-one match of what my construction detail would look like. So my house is perfectly built, etc., etc. Now, we can dive more into the same stuff, but what I want to really get into is now getting into the power of editing, and we'll kind of end there. And really what I mean is, okay, so we can, since things are solid, if we needed to, let's say, redesign this portion of the house, and we want to do something over here, I can draw, again, what I would call a cutting box, and I'm just going to kind of overlap the house, turn this into a group, and then subtract this from this part of the house. And now I can start modeling something new. Now, that might not be the best example because it's always easy enough just to come in and edit this, but it's just showing you what can be done. Now, where it really could have power is, okay, what if the client is, hey, I like this roof, but what would it look like if we had gable roofs on the sides? Okay, well, that is a little bit more difficult. How do we start manipulating this back into a gable? Do we push-pull this over? How do we start eliminating all of this? And it's just a lot of work. So since this roof is a solid, again, I'm just going to build this generic cutting box, turn this into a group, and I'll grab it and click on any point in the roof, really, and I like hitting the ridge. And I will now subtract here from here, and we've now gotten rid of all of that geometry that was kind of in our way. And we can push-pull this over to here. So now this is not a perfect gable roof, but we still some editing to do, but we can quickly show, okay, hey, this is what it would look like if we had a single gable there. Well, what if we want to see the gable here? So again, if we were to try to edit this, I mean, that would be a massive amount of editing and lines, and it would just be brain damage. So let's create another, I'm going to do a skinnier kind of box here, turn that into a group, and I'm just going to drop this guy onto here. And let's actually scale this, and what I want to scale it to is I want to find somewhere in between that's past this eve line, but still kind of in between here. So now we will subtract this from here, and I'm going to explode and then Shift G, because that allows me to turn both of these back into their own groups. So now we can just come in and push-pull this guy to here, and we will then push-pull this guy to here, and we can quickly say, okay, well, that's how a gable on this side would look, and this is how a hip would look on this side. And then once you really start getting into, okay, we really like the gable, how do we, we then can use solid tools and inferencing and all those good sorts of things to actually build a real gable. I'm trying to inference, it's not inferencing, but I'm just going to grab this line and make a copy, because I'm going to show you kind of one last thing. I grab this and I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to just erase these extra lines. This triangle here, I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to push-pull in 8 inches, and because then I want to come back to my walls, turn that into a group, paste in place, and then push-pull 8 inches, because this is now going to be my rake beam, and turn that into a group. And since these are now both solids, we can join these together, and we now have a perfect wall for our gable. So then we can start playing with how this would all really start coming out. And I'm just going to do this quickly, even though this might not be fully accurate. I would get into a whole other level of modeling the gables, but I just kind of want to show you, generically what this might look like. And I'm just going to do the one side. Just push-pull this up, or extend that line, and then we can push pull this out, however long, maybe it's 8 inches to there, and then, we have, I don't know why that's not inferencing, but that's all right. Let's do this. So again, do that. And so again, this is not a technically correct gable, but that's a whole other lesson. And so now you can start to see how we, whoops, sorry about that, how the gable would work. And we would, kind of make that out. In fact, really what I would really do is create a jig of these extensions as its own solid and glue that to here using my solid tools. But so anyway, that's kind of everything that is going on with solid tools. I know it's a lot of information, and it's more about a process than the solid tools themselves, and how you start using all these tools holistically together to create a system in which you can model that allows for consistency and teamwork and effort and all that good kind of stuff that comes together. This is my methodology. Love to hear any questions you have. If you see me around Basecamp, more than happy to kind of talk through anything. So just to end everything, we did all of our demos. So there are some resources that are worth kind of jumping into. So the SketchUp Help Center in general is great. They have a ton of information there. This link brings you directly to, they have a whole tutorial on creating complex 3D shapes using solid tools. So that's a good one. This is the link to the Cleanup 3 and Solid Inspector, and the link to Loose to Groups. So, you have all those resources. So again, just thank you. Just more information about us. You can scan this QR code to give some feedback.